Hey gang, Ed Nelson here. You know, I get questions all the time at seminars about how I choose a proper spinnerbait. And that's what I want to talk to you today about. How to choose a spinnerbait for your fishing conditions. Now, there's two common ways to choose a spinnerbait. The first is go to your local Bass Pro, pick one off a store shelf, and throw it. The second way, well, that requires a little more explanation. You have to understand the individual components of the bait and then apply those to your fishing conditions. Now, if the first way is more your style, that's not a problem. Here's what you need. What you're looking for is a 3/8 ounce white spinnerbait with tandem blades. If you tend to fish deeper water, maybe bump that to a 1/2 ounce. Same white skirt and tandem blades. Now, if the second way is more your style, well, that's going to require a little more explanation. And probably the best way to get started is to just start with head weight. That's about the easiest to understand. The head weight is, what we're talking about there is the lead head of the bait. All right? And what that does is it determines how deep the bait's going to run on a retrieve. So I have a very simple rule of thumb that I follow. If I'm fishing in water less than 5 feet deep, I'm going to throw 1/4 to 3/8 of an ounce. If I'm fishing in water 5 to say 10 feet deep, I'm going to throw 3/8 to 5/8. And if I go deeper than 10 feet, I'm going to throw 5/8 up to an ounce. Skirt color, that's our next consideration. Now, whenever I'm choosing a skirt color, I always want to match the hatch. But if I don't know what the hatch is, I don't know what they're feeding on, I have, again, another simple rule of thumb that I follow. If I'm fishing in clear water, and clear water to me is visibility of say about 5 feet, I like a white skirt. If I have visibility say 2 feet, that would be stained water to me, I like a white and chartreuse skirt. And if I have water clarity of say 6 inches to a foot, somewhere in there, that's muddy water to me. I'm going to go with an all chartreuse skirt. But whenever possible, I want to match the hatch. So if I know it's a shad bite, white's a great choice. But if I know the kind of shad, let's say for example it's a blackback shad or a greenback shad or a blueback shad, I want to incorporate that into my skirt color. So if I know they're feeding on oliveback shad, I'm going to want some green strands in my skirt. If I know they're feeding on blue herring, I'm going to want some blue strands in my skirt. So whenever possible, I want to match the hatch. But if I don't know, that simple rule of thumb will at least get you started for that fishing day. Now, your third consideration, that's blade. Blade or blades. You can throw a single or tandem blades. And there's a couple of options there. Your first is color. Most blades come in either silver or gold. And I break it down this way. I like silver on sunny days and gold on cloudy days. That's it. Now as far as the design goes, that's a little bit different. You have 3 blades you need to consider. The first blade is the willow leaf blade. And it gets its name because it's shaped like a willow leaf. It provides the most amount of flash and the least amount of vibration. So it's best suited for clear water conditions. The next one is the Indiana blade. It's more of a teardrop shape. It gives off a good amount of flash and a good amount of vibration. It's sort of a middle bait, and it's better for your stained water conditions. And then the last consideration is the Colorado blade. And the Colorado blade, has more of a rounded shape. And it gives off more vibration and less flash. So it's better suited for your muddy water conditions. Now, the other consideration, single blade or tandem blade. And I have another simple rule of thumb that I follow. If I'm moving the bait with my rod, meaning I'm either lifting it up and letting it fall, or I'm yo-yoing it, or I'm jigging it, I'm going to use a single blade bait. And the reason being is, with a single blade spinnerbait, When I lift my rod up and I drop slack to it and I let that bait fall, it falls head first. Not nose first, but head first. The head weight's going to lead. So what happens is the back blade will actually ride up and spins and twirls all the way down. And that's what it triggers your strike, is that falling bait effect. Now, if I have a tandem blade in that same situation, the front blade will just lay flat. And I don't like the way that looks in the water. It seems very unnatural. I just want that single blade spinning and twirling all the way down, and then I lift it back up and I let it twirl all the way down. That's the effect that I want. All right? But if I'm moving the bait with my reel, fast or slow, whether I could be burning it or I could be slow rolling it, I always throw a tandem blade. And the reason for that is, first of all, I don't know if you can hear this, but I like to use my blades as a noisemaker. So one of the ways I fish this bait is if I'm object fishing, maybe it's dock pilings or maybe it's a stump or something like that. What I like to do is I'll cast beyond the stump or beyond the brush pile or down that log, and as I get towards the end of the log or right up to the stump or the spot where I think is holding the bass, I'll pause the bait for a second and I'll twitch my rod tip. And what happens is, as the bait's, you can imagine this bait moving through the water, it stops for a second. It falls, hesitates, and then takes back off again. And what happens is the skirt will pulsate and the blades will hit together. And when they do that, that's what triggers the strike. It's that slight hesitation as I get to the end of that lay down, or that slight hesitation over the stump that causes the fish to hit it. That's where most of my bites come from. So I like to use the blades as a noisemaker. All right. Now, remember, a 3/8 ounce tandem blade white spinnerbait is going to catch you a few fish. But if you take the time to match the head weight for the depth you want the bait to run, match the blades to your water and sky conditions, and match the hatch with your skirt, you're going to have a very effective bait that's going to catch you a lot more fish. Now, for my guys out there looking for that competitive edge, looking for that pro's pointer, here you go. There's another consideration, and for me, it's head design. My bait of choice, or I should say my spinnerbait of choice, is a Hoppy's Lure spinnerbait. And there's a few things that intrigue me about it. The first one, made in America. I can definitely get behind that. But more importantly, as you look at the bait, you'll see the quality of the bait, and that for me is what counts. First of all, the swivels are Sampo ball bearing swivels, which means they're going to be spinning no matter what. A standard barrel swivel will stick, especially in weedy cover. A ball bearing swivel is going to spin. It's riding on ball bearings, it's not going to stick on you. You're going to get a lot better vibration, especially at slower speeds. Second consideration, head design. And this is what really intrigued me about the bait. If you notice, this Hoppy's bait has got a flat bottom head on it. A traditional spinnerbait has got more of a wedge-shaped head. And what this allows me to do is to move this bait through heavy cover slower, and the bait's not going to roll over. What happens with a traditional spinnerbait is, when I'm, say, bumping this thing to a treetop, or down a laydown, and I'm trying to hit every branch along the way, that's what triggers your strikes. Well, with a traditional spinnerbait, you have to keep the bait moving quickly, or what will happen is as it comes over that limb, it'll want to roll to the side. Because it's on that wedged head, it'll want to roll to the side. When it does, the trailer hooks will tend to hang, and when they do, you can very easily get hung up. All right. The other thing that happens is, if it doesn't get hung up, and it rolls to the side, when you pop that bait free, that's when you usually get your bite. Well, if you notice, if I roll this to the side and pop that bait free, the blades are to the side. If that's where my bite's coming from, I'm going to wind up with a blade hit and not a hook hit. You're not going to hook up that way. But with the Hoppy spinnerbait and that flat bottom head, as I come over that limb, I can keep the bait upright, and you can see here the hook stays upright. So I can move it slower through cover, and when I pop it free over that limb or over the backside of that stump, what happens is the bait stays upright and I'm ready to catch that fish. I'm not laid side to side. When you couple that with the ball bearing swivel, my blades are still turning too, so I can move slower through cover and still keep the blades turning and keep the bait upright. Whereas with the traditional spinnerbait, what would happen is the blades would stop turning at slow speeds and the bait would roll to its side, so I have to move it faster to get the same effect. And just spending more time in the strike zone with any bait is going to get you more bites. Taking that head design to the next step would be, say, a main lake point, which we talked about earlier. If I'm hopping that bait down a main lake point, obviously I'll be throwing a single blade. But with a traditional spinnerbait, what I'm doing is I'm letting that bait fall and I'm ripping it into deeper water and letting it fall again. And as it's coming down that main lake point or over that hump, every time the bait hits the bottom, I pop it free again. And it leaves a little puff of sand or a little puff of mud. Sort of like a crawfish or a baitfish fleeing, and it's that reaction. That's how you get your reaction bite, is that fleeing bait effect. With a traditional spinnerbait, again with that wedged head, when it hits the bottom and I pull, it digs into the mud because it's got an edge on it, and that's not what I want. With a flat bottom head, it's glancing off, so it's always hitting like that. It falls, I rip the bait up, I let it fall, and I pop it free just like that, and I get that little puff of mud, and the bait's already upright. It's not laying on its side, it's not dug in the mud, it's coming up clean and upright, so as soon as that bait clears the bottom and leaves that little puff of sand, that little puff of mud, the fish is ready to catch the fish. Whereas with a traditional spinnerbait, it's going to fall and either dig in or lay on its side, and it's not coming up ready. Also laying on its side, again, I'm ready to hang the bottom, and that's not what I want. I want that bait upright, come down, hit, and then pull off again. And you can see that's ready to catch a fish. Alright? Now, the traditional spinnerbaits will work. They're going to catch a lot of fish. But if you really want that competitive edge, I'm telling you guys, look into a hoppy spinnerbait. If you're not throwing hoppies, you're not fishing to win. I am. You can find them at your local Bass Pros or on the web at hoppieslures.com. My name's Ed Nelson. I'll see you next time.